Hey guys, Paeter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review of The Last Voyage of the Demeter. By the way, if you like horror, go to spiritblade.com tomorrow, the 11th of November, Saturday. All of my audio dramas are going to be free that day only, including From Beyond, my adaptation of the classic tale of cosmic horror by H.P. Lovecraft, as well as the entire Spirit Blade trilogy, part 2 of which heavily inspired by my love of horror. Anyway, don't miss free download day, spiritblade.com, November 11th only. But for now, let's get back into The Last Voyage of the Demeter. The synopsis, well, slightly modified by me, on IMDb reads, based on a single chapter, The Captain's Log from Bram Stoker's classic 1897 novel Dracula, the story is set aboard the Russian schooner Demeter, which was chartered to carry private cargo, 24 unmarked wooden crates, from Carpathia to London. The film details the strange events that befell the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean voyage, stalked each night by a terrifying presence on board the ship. When it finally arrived near the Whitby harbor, it was derelict. There was no trace of the crew. All right, so what's the basic vibe, the tone, the pacing of this thing? The first act is mostly setup of characters so that, we know or care about them as they are picked off a little bit later. There's some ominous foreshadowing here and there, but nothing really intense until about a third to one half of the way through the movie. There was probably about the halfway point and a little beyond it, some really brutal violence in a couple of places that just made me, just kind of cringe and really cranked things up suddenly. But this brutality, I thought, kind of peaked early compared to the climax of the movie, and the creature itself I didn't find scary, for reasons I'll go into a little bit later. The setting is established in a way, though, that I found really effective, and the characters and their motives I thought were interesting enough, but I never latched on to a central character that I really cared about. The focus, I think, was spread just a little too thin to the point that it prevented that. Now, this made me uncertain who, if anyone, would survive, but also left me less invested in the last remaining protagonists before the end of the movie. A small amount of focus was also given to the plight of an educated black man trying to overcome racial injustice. Now, that's a worthy theme, but it felt like a minor rabbit trail that kind of deflated what could have been opportunities to continue building up that tension. The ending felt a little bit like, I guess, a betrayal of the premise and seems to maybe set up a sequel, but I would have preferred it if it was just a single story that I was more impacted by. Now, the cast really wasn't what I felt like let me down in watching this. I thought it was a solid ensemble cast with no weak links. I do tend to care about actors' performances, and there's none here that I would pick on, including the child actor playing the captain's grandson. I just don't have a lot of tolerance for child actors that really can't convince me and of their realism of their character, or engage me at least with their character in a way that I feel something for them, or I just go along with believing that they're not reciting lines, And we had a good child actor here, so I have no complaints about any of the performances, but neither did I find any unusually striking or engaging. Okay, so let's talk about probably the main thing that kept me from really engaging with this movie the way I wanted to. The ship, the props, the costumes, they all felt so earthy and realistic, and it felt in some ways like a real achievement for a presumably smaller budget movie. I don't know the budget, but I think it's a smaller budget movie. But the budget constraints showed up in the CG. There was wide shots of the boat early on and a few green screen backgrounds that I was like, yeah, I'm not quite buying that. But those could have been forgiven and forgotten by me if it weren't for Dracula himself, the monster of the movie, exclusively appearing in his ghoulish, humanoid, bat-like form. Almost every shot of him was CG, and I so wanted him to be more hidden. And it just deflated almost every appearance of his for me. And there was also some instances of CG blood splatters, and even like CG blood flow, where it was pooling up around someone's neck, and I'm like, why are you doing that with CG? You can totally do that practically. And I didn't understand. Maybe they were wanting it to flow a certain way, or I just was like, what in the world is this? And it just took me out of moments that really should have pulled me in, or made me cringe and repulsed me by what was happening. I think a different approach to the visual effects and or just hiding the monster much more could have compensated for some of the issues that I had with maybe the script and kind of its focus. In fact, changing the approach of the monster alone. I mean, I just reviewed with my son Jaws a few weeks ago, and we were both struck by how well that movie holds up. And a lot of it has to do with when you choose to show the monster and when you choose not to show the monster, when you choose to obscure the monster. And I think that the last voyage of the Demeter could have learned so much by just applying more of the lessons of Jaws. And I think changing the approach for how they portrayed, displayed, generated the monster could have made this a pretty special experience for me. But the CG and the way they chose to showcase the monster just pulled the movie down almost into a comparatively like a made-for-TV territory for me. Really disappointing in that regard. As far as themes, I'm always on the lookout for themes of potential moral or philosophical or spiritual significance that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation. Dracula, as many know, is strongly rooted in at least the trappings of Christianity. And several crew members in this movie have some form of Christian faith that really did become relevant. But the real theme brought into focus, I think, is that of trying to understand why this world has such beauty, but then at the same time, such horrible things in it. Why must there be such suffering and injustice? And I think the subtle addition to the question, at least in the context of the trappings of Christianity, seemed to be, why, if God exists, does he allow such horrible things? Now, there isn't much of an answer given to either the more direct question or maybe that kind of supplementary version of it, but mostly just this insistence that we must endure, even if we don't understand. But I think there was a lot of potential for a response right there in the context that was just left unused. We see a lot of crucifixes in this movie, and that's a reminder that God entered into the human experience, including the very worst of its injustice and suffering. And he did that to provide a way for us to one day be rescued out of injustice and suffering forever. Now, it's not that understanding this provides us an easy answer and explains why our particular instances of suffering and injustice are allowed. And it certainly doesn't make the pain of those things go away. But it does say that God does not observe our suffering from this distant safety, but instead makes himself vulnerable to it, enters into it with us. And if Jesus is any indication, God can take even suffering and injustice and use them to bring about an outcome that is well more than worth the cost. All right, now I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Paeter, dang it, skip this one. You love monster movies. It's your favorite, almost your exclusive type of horror movie that you enjoy. And this monster movie has some great elements to it. But this monster movie is brought down by the monster itself, and your time would just be better spent on something else. This one is rated R for bloody violence. And those are all of my thoughts for now on The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Dan Axel, Gabriel Stinson, Olin D. Branham, Winston Crutchfield, Lee Bray, Justin D. Myers, Joel Nelson, and Scruffosaurus. Thank you for supporting me, and SBP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name in song? Check out our page on Patreon. All right. I'd love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about all the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Don't forget, spiritblade.com, November 11th, free download day. Bye-bye. horrible beyond conception was the change which had taken place in my best friend, Crawford Tillinghast. I had indeed warned him 10 weeks before when he burst forth with his tale of what he felt himself about to discover. I have always believed that such strange, inaccessible worlds exist at our very elbows, and now I believe I have found a way to break down the barriers. We entered the laboratory in the attic, and I observed that detestable electrical machine, glowing with a sickly, sinister, violet luminosity. Listen to me. The waves from that thing are waking 1,000 sleeping senses in us. During the interval that Tillinghast was silent, I fancied myself in some vast and incredible temple of long-dead gods. Some vague edifice of innumerable black stone columns reaching up from a floor of damp slabs to a cloudy height beyond the range of my vision. The picture was very vivid for a while, but gradually gave way to a more horrible conception. Then from the farthermost regions of remoteness, the sound softly glided into existence. It was infinitely faint, subtly vibrant, and unmistakably musical, but held a quality of surpassing wildness, which made its impact feel like a delicate torture of my whole body. "Don't move," he cautioned, "for in these rays we are able to be seen as well as to see. Remember, we're dealing with a hideous world in which we are practically helpless. Keep still." Indescribable shapes, both alive and otherwise, were mixed in disgusting disarray, and close to every known thing were whole worlds of alien, unknown entities. Foremost among the living objects were great, inky, jellyish monstrosities which flabbily quivered in harmony with the vibrations from the machine. They were present in loathsome profusion, and I saw to my horror that they overlapped, that they were semi-fluid and capable of passing through one another and through what we know as solids. These things were never still, but seemed ever floating about with some malignant purpose. "You see them! You see them! You see the things that float and flop about you and through you every moment of your life. What swept up the servants? What made them scream so loud? Don't know. You'll know soon enough. Look at me. Listen to what I say. Do you suppose there are really any such things as time and magnitude? Do you fancy there are such things as form or matter? I tell you, I have struck depths that your little brain can't picture. I have seen beyond the bounds of infinity and drawn down demons from the stars. I have harnessed the shadows that stride from world to sow death and madness. Space belongs to me, do